Hey everyone. Well, for those just joining, we've been hearing from experts about sustainability and climate justice and how to achieve a more equitable world. So tonight, up next, we have Lubna Ahmed. She's the director of environmental health at We Act for Environmental Justice, who's going to talk to us about her environmental justice campaigns and more. My name is Zinhle Essamuah. I'm a hosting correspondent at NowThis News. And if you want to join this discussion, I know we're all virtual and online during this unprecedented time, but you can leave your comments below and I can ask Lubna your questions after. So Lubna, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so can you just jump in and tell us about some of your environmental justice campaigns?
Yeah, for sure. As was mentioned, my name is Lubna Ahmed. I'm the director of environmental health at We Act for Environmental Justice. Just a little bit of background about me. My background is in public health. I, lived in DC for a number of years, working at a variety of community-based environmental conservation nonprofits. And prior to coming to New York City, I was with the U.S. Peace Corps in Nicaragua doing environmental education. So I've been with We Act for a couple of years now. And We Act is a community-based nonprofit organization located in West Harlem. And we really work to build healthy communities by ensuring that low-income individuals and people of color are participating meaningfully in the fair and sound creation of environmental health policies and practices. So it's a very much a for the people, by the people type model. We Act works with the membership base. We have a membership of over 800 local residents right here who we engage with on a monthly basis at membership meetings. And we really go over a wide variety of topics. Our mission is really in our name. We act for environmental justice. And for those that are less familiar with the concept of environmental justice, it is really the ability of all people to live, work, play, worship, learn in a safe and healthy environment, regardless of what neighborhood you live in, what race you are, your income. And so, I do want to get into talking about the importance of mobilizing communities to achieve environmental action. I'll just start off by saying, we live in a democracy. I mean, the direct meaning of the words democracy mean power to the people, meaning that we have the power to impact change and make decisions. And without community mobilization, change really can't be made in an equitable and just way that really serves everybody. The other thing I just wanted to really quickly get us grounded in before I kind of jump into some of the campaigns that We Act is involved with is really understanding the concept of environmental racism, which is really racial discrimination that has played out through policies and practices over decades, and it really disproportionately impacts people of color by exposing them to environmental hazards. And so this is this definition of environmental racism that we should all really understand as we're going into these topics. Environmental justice, you can see how this has existed for many, many years, going back to the late 1960s with Dr. Martin Luther King going to Memphis, Tennessee, and supporting sanitation workers, Black sanitation workers who are on strike, to more recent events like the 2014 Flint water crisis, the 2016 Standing Rock protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline. And so those are examples of environmental justice that we've kind of seen more popularized. And We Act has engaged with many different, EJ campaigns at the local level, primarily in Northern Manhattan. We really focus on community-based activism and education to battle really local insidious environmental hazards and promote initiatives to improve the quality of life for our community. So there are three particular campaigns that I really wanted to touch on today. One being about cosmetics and personal care products, another related to public housing, and another related to climate change and more specifically extreme heat. I wanted to start off with talking about this first campaign, which we call the Beauty Inside Out campaign, which is focused on cosmetics and personal care products. And I want to start there because sometimes when people think of environmental justice or environment, they're constantly thinking about like trees and natural resources and things like that, which isn't wrong. But I really want to kind of expand our minds into the environmental health realm, which is really our built environment, like everything around us, like the air that I'm breathing right now, our personal choices that we make, as well as our genetic code. And those three things combined at the epicenter of that is really our environmental health. So with our Beauty Inside Out campaign, we are really educating women of color about toxins in beauty and personal care products. As consumers, we have the right to know what we're putting in and on our bodies. And when we go to the store and we, buy something off the shelf, we should be like reassured that whatever we're buying is not going to be, toxic for our health. And so one of the things that the Beauty Inside Out campaign really focuses on is this European standard of beauty that has really penetrated all racial groups and encouraged certain things like skin whitening or hair straightening, which are really based on this European standard of beauty, and that's kind of what has been dubbed as beautiful, for decades and centuries. And women, as a result of that being the standard of beauty, are starting to expose themselves or have been exposing themselves to harmful products that pose long-term health conditions and health disparities, such as higher rates of breast cancer in women of color. And so there are clear, marketing strategies that target women, and not to mention workers in the beauty industry are predominantly women of color or immigrant women. And so WeAct has developed a bilingual survey that's being administered among 400 to 500 women of color in Northern Manhattan, not only to understand the use of certain products like skin lighteners, hair straighteners, and we do focus on these two products because that's kind of at the intersection of like personal care product use and race. And so not only are we trying to understand use of these products, but also attitudes and perceptions towards them. Like, why are we using these products? Why are we exposing ourselves to these toxic chemicals? Is it, are the things that we're doing it for, is that worth it? So the information that we gather from the survey, we're hoping that will provide us with more quantitative data to support future research on this, which frankly, this is a very under-researched topic. And we have a lot of strong academic partnerships with folks at the George Washington University, Yale School of Public Health, even our local partners here at Columbia. And eventually we do hope to, turn this into a marketplace campaign, focus on a retailer or a manufacturer and get particularly harmful chemicals off the shelves so that they're no longer being sold. So I wanted to pivot and talk a little bit more about our public housing campaign, and specifically focusing on NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority. WeAct's catchment area, as I mentioned, is in Northern Manhattan, and that makes up the majority of New York's 13th congressional district, which has the most public housing units of any district nationwide. Approximately about 20% of our membership base are NYCHA residents who are some of our most active members and that we engage with regularly. And we're part of a number of coalitions where we partner with different community-based organizations and with folks across New York City to really fight for the meaningful investment in NYCHA and fight for tenant rights. One of the really big concerns for NYCHA residents is the need to remedy hazards around housing conditions. Some of the major ones that we focus on are mold, lead, exposure to pests. So we have, a number of things going on in that realm. And what WeAct is currently doing, what one of our major goals is to address the upstream determinants of health by building collective community power to address housing stability, affordability, quality. And one of our major objectives is really establishing this resident prioritized plan for Northern Manhattan ahead of the 2021 mayoral election. We're also developing an advocacy and civic engagement campaign that really helps empower residents as leaders. And we're going to be training NYCHA residents on civic engagement skills, knowledge, including like the legislative process, how to develop an advocacy campaign, strategies around outreach and organizing, general public speaking skills, how to write an op-ed, things like that. And we really hope to elevate the place of NYCHA in the dialogue leading up to the 2021 mayoral election, and really push candidates to engage directly with NYCHA residents on NYCHA issues, including town halls and things like that that take place at actual NYCHA developments. So that's an example of some of our public housing work. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on some of our more climate change related campaigns. And so one of the things that WeAct has been focusing on that we really foresee is this really wide range of environmental harms that are going to intensify as climate change progresses. Some of the most significant factors that will play a role in this intensification are increasing temperatures, along with increased precipitation, rising sea levels. We're expecting to see things like the 2012 Superstorm Sandy. Storms like that are going to be happening with a lot more frequency. One of the things that we're really concerned about right now is extreme heat. During dry summer months, dehydration, stagnant air are all major health concerns impacting vulnerable people. And that can lead to heat exhaustion and death. But there's also really chronic conditions like really poor air quality that exacerbates asthma and asthma conditions. And it's really well known that the urban heat island effect already presents a lot of threats, like across many major cities, and we want to do something to get ahead of the game and address those things. So one of the things that we're working on is developing a community-driven policy for reducing vulnerability to extreme heat, and we plan to seek research and build upon two really community identified policy targets. So one is the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, LAHEAP, and New York City's Cooling Center program. These both have some shortcomings with addressing extreme heat. And so we have been engaging in building community awareness on this topic. We've been holding a series of workshops in our uptown neighborhoods, and we're developing solutions to these issues, and we're going to be launching a campaign that's really going to target this issue at the policy level.
That's great. And it sounds like WeAct is covering so much ground, both with public housing and cosmetics and extreme heat. And I think with the current pandemic, it's really highlighted how interconnected we all are, but also the glaring disparities that exist. What would you say in terms of the communities that are most vulnerable when it comes to these environmental justice issues? And then being on the ground and being at the forefront of so many solutions, are there policies that you think are most effective?
Yeah, so I mean, I especially want to, touch on the topic of vulnerable communities. When we're talking about things like climate change, environmental degradation, we mentioned racism, wealth inequities, which have also existed far before the COVID crisis, which I do want to touch on briefly. But when we're talking about vulnerable communities, we're talking about low-income individuals, people of color, indigenous peoples, folks who live in public housing, who are at increased risk of, exposure to harmful environmental hazards. And, the long-term or cumulative exposure to, for example, outdoor and indoor pollutants like emissions from vehicles or indoor pollutants like mold and lead can lead to chronic diseases or comorbidities, like the existence of, two chronic diseases in one person. And there have to be, policies and measures in place to ensure that these populations are being particularly protected because they are being disproportionately impacted. And one of the things that we really focus on in public health are the social determinants of health, which are conditions in which we're born, that we grow and we age, and these can be income, race, employment, housing, education, what neighborhood you live in. It's often said that, you know, your zip code can be more of a determinant of your health outcomes than your genetic code. And that's, you know, because of your built environment is what's you're constantly being surrounded by.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And where can people learn more? It's sad that we can't talk about this for hours and hours because I think there's so much to cover. But if people want to learn more about the work that you're doing, where can they go?
Yeah, so, you know, I would just encourage folks to first start off by visiting our website at weact.org. We encourage everybody to stand up and fight for environmental justice because, you know, we are really all in this together. I mean, by, you know, fighting for our most vulnerable communities, we need to understand that that is going to put protective measures in place to really protect all of our health. And so, on our website, we have tons of resources that people can gain access to.
Well, thank you so much. And again, that was Lubna Ahmed, the Director of Environmental Health at We Act for Environmental Justice. Thank you for being with us. I'm Zinhle Essamuah, a host and correspondent at NowThis. And up next, we're going right to a conversation with Oceanic Global and Arcadia Earth. Let's tune in.